Strawweight Donnybrook coming up this weekend. We have the undefeated Victoria Dudakova taking on the former Invicta Atomweight champ. It is Jinh You Frey. And Matt, when we look at a matchup like this, it feels a little bit like in with the old and out with the new. Well, that's not how it goes. In with the new, out with the old. And for Jinh You Frey, she's halfway to 39. She's 2-5 in the UFC. She's lost her last 3 fights. It seems to me like she's a little bit of a stepping stone in this fight. But you can't just say that, because you got to take a look at the opponent that she's facing, Victoria Dudakova. And we had a lot to say going into her debut against Estela Nunes. If you look at Dudakova, after her last fight on Contender Series, that was the state of her knee. In the second round, it went really bad for her against Maria Silva. Wins the first round, wins the third round. Dana White says, and I quote Matt, "I didn't love this fight, but she showed me everything that I needed to see in the fight."
It was next level resiliency, and that is the wild thing. Like, she had so much success with her own offensive grappling in that opening round, but like you say, the second round was the complete opposite. Like, she was getting absolutely dominated. I think the graphic up on the screen was like 3.5 minutes of opponent top control on her, and that was the really odd thing to see because, like you bring up, in the third round, well, it just completely got flipped over on its head again.
Oh, it's going to be really weird because, again, for Dudakova, getting back from that knee injury, we talked about her before she fought Maria Silva, who was a pretty big favorite over there on Contender Series. Let's throw it on over to a clip from the show from last summer.
But when it does come down to this fight, hoop of shame around Dudakova. She's able to make the weight successfully. Very, very young prospect she is. So maybe if she doesn't win this fight, she ends up back on the show in some capacity. I think she has a very, very, bright future in the sport. And I think for Maria Silva, a lot of people are going to rally around her. If I'm not mistaken, she is the favorite in this matchup as well. So the more known commodity, I think Dudakova has a great shot in this matchup here.
This is my issue with Dudakova. I wasn't impressed with any of her wins on the regional scene. Like, a lot of her wins were over people who she was kind of expected to win. They were making their debut. They didn't have a lot of experience. She had beat one fighter with a good record, but if you do any deep dive on that fighter, she had lost 3 fights going into that, and then the loss to Dudakova was her 4th loss in a row, which isn't great. I don't disagree with you that she could develop into something very promising. I just don't have a good read on her right now, if I'm being completely honest and transparent. At least with Maria Silva, I do feel like she has a steadier foundation, if that makes any sense, because she is good in the clinch. She's a very physically strong fighter, fights with her hands up, will throw a lot of kicks. See, there's a foundation there that you can definitely build upon, like there are other fighters out there who fight in a similar manner to that. That's the problem, though. We have seen her struggle with some of the takedown defense and some of the grappling in the past. She's not bad when she gets top position. Like I said, really physically strong fighter. She can threaten with some of those head and arm chokes herself, get past guard, threaten with ground and pound. But on the defensive end, you do worry about her, especially against someone like Dudakova, who has shown the ability to finish fights with really high-level submissions. So I think this is one of those fights where we just sort of learn more about both fighters, and that's sort of the win that we all get from it.
So if you look at it for Dudakova, training out of... I mean, listen, the gym name, I threw down a different gym name. I put Extreme Couture. She's in Vegas getting ready for this one. But she trains out of a gym called Sambo 34. Like Mambo number 5, but Sambo 34 with Gasanali. So against Estela Nunes, Victoria Dudakova runs in. There's a little bit of an exchange. Now you're taking on an accredited Muay Thai striker in Estela Nunes. I picked Estela Nunes to win that fight. And in under a minute, Dudakova goes for an ankle pick. Estela Nunes slips. Like, Dudakova barely even touches her. Nunes slips onto her elbow, dislocates her elbow.
So gross.
And it was disgusting. When I was writing my notes earlier on this morning, my wife walked by the office. She looked at my face and she went, why are you making that face? And I said, well, this lady, she dislocated her elbow and it's really gross. And you could hear Estela Nunes shouting in pain. So it was really an odd scene. But that's what happened in the office today. So ultimately, Dudakova gets a UFC win. It's a win by finish, but we don't really necessarily categorize it as so.
I looked at the fight today and went, I don't need to watch this again, and just decided not to.
I did, but really when it comes down to it, Matt, for Jinh You Frey, we'll focus on the 2 and the 5 in the UFC, because Frey was somebody, you know her for her nuclear medicine background and the jobs that she's held outside of MMA. But inside of MMA, again, 2 fights against Ayaka Hamasaki, an all-time legend, a fight against Seo Ham, who's gotten to the top of the mountain, different promotions, maybe not so the UFC. You look at the UFC run, Kay Hansen is a loss, Loma Lookboonmee a loss, wins over Gloria DePaula and Ashley Yoder.
Those cuts were
17 have tried, and 9 have succeeded. And Vanessa Demopoulos a loss, Polyana Viana Matt. Again, for Jinh You Frey, 2-5 in the UFC. She's been favored only once and it was in a loss by split decision to Vanessa Demopoulos, where most people had thought that Jinh You Frey had won, but the last two, Elise Reed and Polyana Viana. Viana knocks her out pretty well cold, and then so Frey was able to succeed in the wrestling against Elise Reed, but ultimately it was Reed striking, pulling out. When you look at this fight, though, I mean, Victoria Dudakova, she can do a little bit of the striking. She feels like a physically imposing grappler in this division, so now you kind of get iron versus iron, 7-0 versus 11-9. It seems like an easy pick from the outset, but Jinh You Frey is a tricky southpaw with a good jab and a really good straight lefty on the pipe.
The problem is, though, is she going to be able to have that continued success for all 15 minutes? Because either Dudakova is going to try to get her to the ground with a lot of not the greatest takedowns, if we're being honest, right? Again, to talk about Chael Sonnen for the second time in 2 videos, she's not going to go in there and shoot double legs like him, but those kind of drag takedowns from the clinch could work against a fighter like Jinh You Frey, and even Jinh You Frey might decide, hey, I'm going to shoot a takedown at some point. I don't think it's a good idea, but the majority of the fights where she has had success in the UFC, it has been the offensive wrestling. So if that's the thing that you go to have success at this level, I do expect you to probably do it again. And I just don't know, even if she's able to secure that top position, can she consistently grapple for long enough to get away? Because if she doesn't make a bunch of mistakes, right, then maybe she can hold out for the rest of the round, win that round with top position. But Dudakova's tricky off her back, and she's going to go for maybe not just submissions, but scrambles as well. And anything that can create space between these two is going to help favor Dudakova during any single ground exchange.
It's a little bit like TJ Brown, Darren Elkins, and to a lesser extent Christian Rodriguez versus Cameron Simon that we had last weekend. But when you look at this one, Matt, Dudakova heavily favored in the matchup. Yeah. We have a look at the Tapology votes. Surprise to us as they are to you. I'm going to say over under 92.5% Dudakova.
They're high, but I'll say higher.
It is higher. 1,244 total votes, 97% Dudakova, 52% by decision, 28% by submission for the 3% that have Jinh You Frey.
Wow.
73% by decision. Matt, to me, I think Dudakova wins a decision, but I don't think she wins all 3 rounds. And I think it's going to be a lot closer than the odds would suggest. So I do have Dudakova in the matchup. Again, if you go back and watch that Contender Series fight, like we mentioned against Maria Silva, there was a window in there for Silva to come back, and it wasn't like Dudakova fought the best and the brightest when she spent her time outside of the UFC. So a tough test at 11-9, but I do have Dudakova here.
I've also got her in the matchup. The thing about Frey is, again, the thing that gives her the most success at this level is probably going to put her in the most danger, especially in this matchup. And I think Dudakova is going to be able to threaten enough off of her back to not just be a sitting duck and get stuck in some of those Louis Smolka positions, as we used to allude to. So I have Dudakova in this fight, but it should be a fun one.
Degrees in nuclear medicine and radiological sciences, as I wear a shirt that says Lake Erie College of, what is that? Osteopathic medicine? I apologize.
Osteopathic?
Osteopathic. It's hard to read upside down sometimes. Matt, a big time matchup. Both of us going with Dudakova here. Title fight up at the top. Rematch. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Name Picks. We always say, let's get into it.